two questions in this debate. First, are they criminally and morally responsible? And second, will this have practical benefits while we're sending innocent people to jail? But first, a gratuitous amount of rebuttal. So we first hear that we first of all need to protect. That is not enough to win the debate. A, because of concession already given by opening opposition, but B, because it's implausible. You can send tons of people to jail who are likely to murder people, right? There are people who, for example, have murdered and have left jail, and we know statistically that they are likely to commit crimes again, and you don't, I assume, want to do that. So just showing that you're protecting more victims is not enough. We need to weigh things up, and we'll talk about that in a second. Second, they say, look, we don't care at all about, what they care and their moral issues and their actual intent, as long as they intended to break a law. That's an interesting idea. If you want to send them to court for disorderly conduct and not living up to the law, that is fine. If you want to send them for murder over honorary killings, and OG are very clear what they say, we think this policy defines what we think about intent, right? We could still give them for manslaughter, right? The action of not doing the law remains. But if you want to send them for murder, for the intent of doing that, everything we just heard about it being about intending to break the law is irrelevant. We are genuinely fine with sending people for intending to break the law, which would be about as much as disorderly conduct, when they commit murder, which we would like to call manslaughter. We genuinely think they didn't have the intent of murder in mind for all the reasons we would say, and we'll touch upon later. Next they say, look, you hospitalize the mentally ill. Will you hospitalize culturally ill people? Several notes on this. Note that there is a difference between punishing people and using preventive measures. So for example, if someone rapes and we decide for cultural reasons that we don't want to punish him, it's fine to say that he has a restraining order, even in a civil court, from these people. We're okay with preventive measures, and that is a huge distinction between saying these people should be convicted for murder, right? We think that in extreme cases, like extremely dangerous mentally ill, we'd be fine with that. And extreme cases of the people who, once you let them out of court, start murdering all around, we're okay with stopping them at that point, right? But we don't think they're responsible for murder. Moving on. No, thank you. Next note, they say, look, we have no ray of hope. Their ideology will remain. If you have a solution, I'll get to that again in the rest of my speech. If you have a solution for making things better, and we're not claiming that you don't, fine. Through education, through changing the community, that's great. As long as you don't change the community, and we're going to talk about whether this changes the community, this is a crime against the people who are the victims of those communities. And they then give the wonderful example of Turkish kids that are sent to honorary killings by their leaders. We love this example. This is the exact case that we're trying to make, because by their own analysis, this ideology is entrenched and the state cannot change the leader's ideology, right? CEO say this explicitly. No, thank you. And the Turkish kids can't tell their leaders no, right? They can't tell their parents they won't do this. A, because they're kids and they don't know any better, but B, because they don't have the power in their community. This is exactly the analysis that Ahmad gives you. This is why until you change the community, which we're all for, you cannot send these kids to prison, and definitely making longer prison sentences for those innocent kids won't help in changing the community leader's mind. So we think that completely falls to our side. Lastly, they say, look, just like we don't want pedophiles, we expect people not to do what they think. A, there is a difference between sexual urges and moral considerations. We'll talk about why moral considerations are important in court and someone having a sexual urge is not. And secondly, note that we do allow citizens to make those decisions for themselves when it has to do with intent. For example, in self-defense, we ask whether the person could reasonably know that his life is in danger. If he thought that it was, we allow him to be either completely not convicted or at least less intent, right? The intent depends on what that person thinks. No thinking. So we think that this falls as well. So let's start with, are they criminally and morally responsible? One note, that if they are not, this is enough to win the debate. I will clearly say that they wouldn't if they were not responsible, like the mentally ill. They would not be okay with putting people that are not criminally responsible for this. Secondly, note, so let's move on to opening government. So opening government would say, look, you're immersed in it, you're brought up in this, you don't always know the rules or understand the rules and so on. OA's response to this is twofold. One, they say, everyone has pressures, right? We expect you to deal with those pressures. Secondly, they said, look, because you chose those cultural pressures over the law, that is what we're punishing you for. No thank you. Note the distinction given by Nat, which answers this incredibly well. Your culture defines how you make choices in the most basic version. Assume, for example, that I was dropped in Nazi Germany today. I would object to many, many of those laws. Because every part of my core objects to them. And it doesn't matter what the law says. Why does that matter? Because a person brought up by his parents, and by his culture, and by his religious leader, he has no way of knowing, if he is like me, inside a terrible society, the tools that he has received to make the moral choice that OO claimed their case on, the tools with which you expect him to choose the law over his culture, are provided to him by his culture. If he can show that those tools were strong enough and against the law enough, we have no reasonable expectation to expect that that person would have any tools to make that important moral decision that opening opposition talked about. Excellent. Note, so the question to you is, how could they know if their tools are given to them by the community? What moral choice is then left to that individual, and how can oppositions blame that person for them? Note, that not also tells you other ways in which they are coerced. Specifically, she says, that because you are dependent on the community, that is coercion. I'll take you now if that's okay.
CG's case falls on two basic assumptions. One, that these people are hidden away from any other societal cultures, but two, that the legal bar for diminished capacity is reasonable person, and not as it is basic cognitive ability to opt out, like you have with children, like you have with the mental.
Two answers. One, enough characterization of why the people relevant to this debate are the people in isolated extremist communities. We don't have to be the most isolated, but it is people whose cultural values do come from the leaders of not states. Secondly, no, we don't think you can logically define what is moral. We don't think people can get to that if you don't teach them. We don't think terrorism, when he comes from the jungle, knows that he's not supposed to publicly urinate. Right? We don't think that happens. Moving on, let's talk about the practical benefits which the opposition spent most of the debate on, even though it does not enough to win. So they talked about tainted communities and about racial discrimination. Note that both of these, if we're talking about extremist communities, and that is what we're, the impact of that is substantially diminished. Note also that because we, okay,